What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to the channel.
Yeah.
So, Nick, we haven't heard from Paulo Costa in quite some time. Haven't seen him in the octagon in a year since he lost in devastating fashion to Israel Adesanya. I, quite frankly, was looking really forward to seeing him come back, seeing what he had to offer, seeing if he could still be a top contender and correct the mistakes that he had made prior, which is what caused him to lose to Izzy. And now all I'm hearing is he's 30 pounds overweight. There's no shot he's going to make 186, which is the limit, right before the 48 hours before the fight. What do you make of all this news that's coming out?
It's irritating.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. It's annoying. And I'm tired of it. Honestly, we won't spend this whole video just ragging on unprofessionalism in a professional sport and weight cuts and all that stuff. But in my opinion, the punishment should be really harsh. If you're going to do stuff like this, you're going to pull shenanigans in a main event, nonetheless, a few days before the fight, you should for sure be suspended, not only from competing against those types of guys, and you should forfeit some money, whether you decide to move up in weight class or not. But you should not be allowed to fight your next fight in the weight class that you're clearly missing by almost an entire weight class.
Right. Yeah, well, this is not even close.
Yeah.
He came out and said, look, I'm 211 pounds, and he has to be 186 because this is a non-title fight. You get the grace pound. So 186 pounds in less than 48 hours time. That's almost impossible. And this kind of leads into what I was talking about when we did a video recapping Izzy versus Costa and the performance that he had. I said he was totally lackluster, totally flat-footed and exhausted because he's zapping too much energy out of himself by cutting too much weight. Coincidentally, the old problems of yesterday seem to be the new problems of today as well. Yeah. And what's driving me crazy about this whole thing, and like, I want to be a Paulo Costa fan. Like, he's very marketable. Yeah. I think he's got almost all of his fights end in knockout. Yeah. He's a really entertaining guy once he's inside the octagon. But, there's been some shenanigans outside the octagon, some back and forth with the organization. There's been a long layoff. Presumably he's getting better, trying to improve his skills. But now you have this. I think that Paulo Costa is simply a light heavyweight disguised as a middleweight. The guy, if you look at him, there's not much weight to pull off. No. If you took a picture of Paulo Costa right now at 211 pounds, shirtless, any personal trainer, any nutritionist, anybody who's properly trained in that type of discipline could tell you very easily there's no way in hell this guy can safely drop 30 pounds almost in less than 48 hours time. Yeah. I think he's doing himself a disservice. The worst part about all this is that he's doing his own self a disservice. I think he's got the skill, the size, and the strength to contend at light heavyweight. I don't know why he's come back for this return fight at middleweight, and clearly it's already starting to not pay off for him.
Yeah, and to be completely honest, I'm not the biggest fan of either of these guys. Yeah, they're kind of like the most dislikable characters in the middleweight division. Yeah, but you said that he's like he's not really a middleweight. He's disguised as a middleweight, but he's really a light heavyweight. He's currently a heavyweight right now. Right. The weight limit for light heavyweight is 205, and he has 48 hours to cut 6 pounds, which sounds a lot more like a reasonable weight cut. So I think he should be banned from fighting 185 until he can prove that he does otherwise. Yeah. The UFC, when you're a main event, they sink a lot of money into you. They're traveling, they're sending their people to promote the fight and build up some anticipation with the footage and the content. And for you to just blow it, and now the hand is completely, it's all in the hands of Marvin Vettori now. Right. If Marvin Vettori says, I'm not fighting him at lightweight, it sucks for Vettori because he doesn't get paid. But now their main card is completely shot. Yeah. And the card's not stacked to begin with. So this is going to do really bad things for the UFC. And these guys, it should reflect in their pay. It should reflect in their placement of the card in the future and where they're able to fight, what weight class they're allowed to go in. If he's over the light heavyweight division weight limit right now, he should not be able to go middleweight next time. It's not healthy. It's not professional. It's a bad look on the sport. And if this fight ends up getting scrapped because of it, the punishment should be severe.
Yeah, and Marvin Vettori, thankfully, has said that it doesn't matter to him. The fight will take place at whatever.
Because he wants to get paid.
Right, he wants to get paid, and he probably doesn't want to go through the pain of cutting those last few pounds himself either, even though he was much closer and in striking distance. There's nothing in Marvin's past or in his camp that would lead me to believe that this was going to be anything other than a good weight cut for him. So I think Marvin's like, listen, you want me to skip a few sauna sessions, skip a few treadmills with the sauna suit on, and still pay me? I'm down. I don't care. We're generally the same size anyways. And, the thing is, what you said is absolutely right. He is, quite frankly, right now, not quite frankly, he is literally right now heavyweight size. And if you're talking about 48 hours from weigh-ins, presumably a week ago, he could have been 15 pounds heavier than he is now.
Right.
That's getting into the range of a normal-sized heavyweight. Think Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier, Junior Dos Santos, Cain Velasquez. But everybody besides Francis, all of the best heavyweights in UFC history, in my opinion, have been around that 240 to 250 mark. I think that's about what Paulo Costa is. I think the height is about the same. The reach is about the same. I don't know why he's trying to make middleweight happen. And when we talked earlier today about doing a video, it was going to be a predictions and a breakdown of the fight. And I know it hasn't quite been that yet. We will get into the X's and O's of the fight. But I'm just so blown away by this whole news. It's like you had an entire year since we've seen you, and you knew exactly what weight class you were coming back at. You knew exactly the date that your fight was happening at. And now you're saying, well, if this fight doesn't happen, it's on Marvin Vettori because I'm down to fight. Well, excuse me, you have an executed contract to weigh 186 pounds, so it's not on Marvin Vettori, it's on you. Marvin's a tough guy, he's going to take it, but it's still on you, Costa.
Yeah, I wanted to pull my ears off when he said that this fight will for sure still take place just as long as Marvin's willing to fight me. It's like he's cutting weight right now. He's going through the hardest part of a training camp, which is cutting weight to fight you in the agreed weight class that you guys have contractually, put together. And for me, it just seems like he doesn't even feel bad about this. It's probably something that he planned on doing, from the beginning. He's not a female where he has to deal with a menstrual cycle and he has to do all these things. And that can actually alter your weight cutting and the way to pull water off and all that stuff. So I can give a little bit of slack to the girls for that. But it seems to me that Paulo Costa didn't even attempt to make the weight limit. And he basically is strong-arming Marvin Vettori into moving up in a weight class, which I think Marvin is a legit 185er.
Yeah.
He's pretty big, but he makes the weight every time.
Yep.
And I feel like if Marvin loses this fight, and it has to do largely with the size, and it's going to suck because it's going to reflect on his rankings and his placement at middleweight when the fight doesn't take place at middleweight and he's fighting a guy who's currently a heavyweight.
Right.
And and also on the other side of that, if Paulo wins, it shouldn't reflect positively on his rankings or his situation or placement in the middleweight division because he's frankly not a middleweight.
Yeah, and I think that this is, there's some people vying for a title shot. Yeah. And I think at 185, and I think all this did is just take Paulo Costa out of that conversation. Yeah. If he were to come in and have a spectacular knockout of Marvin Vettori and he made weight and everything else looked professional, maybe there's that stretch that you could make, hey, I've been off a year. I'm still the number 2 ranked guy in the division. I corrected all the things that cost me the fight against Izzy, and now I'm ready for my rematch. I think he screwed himself as far as that goes. And for the guy that talked about wanting more money, he's sure quick to give up a percentage of his purse because he can't be disciplined and make weight. So I think Paulo Costa needs to move up to light heavyweight at minimum, maybe even heavyweight. I don't think that he would have much of a problem with size and strength at light heavyweight, but anyways, that's a whole nother topic. We'll recap this when it happens, after the fight happens. Let's get into the fight itself. I actually think it's going to be a good fight if it ends up materializing because both of these guys like to put on shows. Both of these guys like to throw big punches. They like to go for the finish. I see this being a very exciting fight. both ways. And I was favoring Vettori. My prediction was actually going to be Vettori. And I'm even more sound and strong. I feel good in that prediction because of all of these problems. It makes me believe that maybe Costa's head wasn't in it during fight camp or something like that. So I think Vettori is going to be able to find the better shots, find the crisper shots, and I think he's going to be able to gas Costa. Both these guys are hard to finish. I think it's going to go later in the rounds, but I think Vettori probably by third round TKO.
Okay, that's decent prediction. Me personally, I don't like the fact that Paulo Costa is now 48 hours before the fight trying to say, let's make this a catchweight. Let's make it a light heavy, because then he doesn't forfeit pay. If I was Marvin Vettori, I'd say I'm coming in at 185 sharp. If he gets under 205, he's going to be way above, but he's not going to be unsanctionable.
Yeah.
And if he can get there, he's going to have to pay me his money, 20% or whatever. And honestly, that's what I would do. I would not be willing to accept a catch weight or a light heavyweight bout if I was Marvin Vettori. I know it sucks to leave a payday on the table, but these guys have to learn a lesson. And Marvin Vettori has all the power right now. That being said, when it comes to the fight, Paulo Costa is a tough guy, but he gasses out at 185 when he actually makes it. Yeah. Imagine what he's going to gas out like when he's 20 pounds heavier and has to move. And I'm assuming it's all muscle still, you know. Yeah. He's a guy that doesn't have a whole lot of fat to get rid of or water or anything like that. I think when there's so much riding on a fight, and even though the lack of discipline and the weight thing is a big issue right now, this was still a title contender's fight.
Yeah.
And it still kind of is. So I think it's actually going to be a boring fight. Yeah. I think that there's too much on the line for either one of them to risk it very much. I think Marvin's going to try to work some offense with his hands and his kicks and stay at range, close the distance when he can, get the big guy, Paulo Costa, to the ground, rinse and repeat for all 5 rounds. We're going to see a decision, and I think it's going to go to the guy who actually is professional in making weight in Marvin Vettori.
Yeah, it's a good prediction, and it definitely could go that way. I think that it'll be harder for Vettori to hold Costa down than it was for him to hold Kevin Holland down, just because Paulo Costa is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt from Brazil. He's pretty legit on the ground, even though most of his fights are knockouts. And on top of that, the strength level, the strength does play a factor there. Yeah. So I think that I think we will see a few ground exchanges. I don't think they'll be prolonged, like how it was. In the Kevin Holland fight when Vettori fought him.
Well, Marvin's been doing a lot of work with the Gracie Baja folks over in California.
Yeah,
so he could have some new wrinkles in his game as far as the jiu-jitsu and grappling realm goes. I'm hoping he gets like a submission or something. I'm not putting too much stock into that. I think it's going to be a decision, and it's going to be a good fight, but I think he's going to be able to get it done.
Yeah, and I think if Costa wins this fight, the real winners here are Jared Cannonier and Derek Brunson. Yeah. Because no doubt the winner of that fight fights for the title next, because you can't let an undisciplined Costa come back after a year, miss weight, and then fight for a title. So he's kind of taken himself out of the running as far as I'm concerned. So it's going to be interesting. I'm still going Vettori. I think he's going to be able to get the job done. I think Costa is going to be a little bit out of whack. We've seen him kind of have issues before where he gets out of sorts, and when things like this happens, when he faces some adversity, he tends to shut down a bit, and people are ragging on him. We're not talking super highly of him right now, and not that he listens to this channel, but I'm sure others will have a similar opinion, and he seems to be the kind of guy where that stuff gets to him. Yeah. And so I think that his head's going to be a little bit out of it, and I think Marvin Vettori is going to finish him in the 3rd or 4th round.
I love that. Win, lose, or draw, his next fight should be at light heavyweight. If the UFC wants to stop giving power to the fighters, they need to make an example of this and show people exactly who the boss is and who writes their paychecks, because it dang sure isn't the fighters.
That's for sure. Yeah. Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Let us know in the comments, what do you think about this whole situation with Costa being 30 pounds overweight 2 days from weigh-ins? Do you think they should still make the fight? If so, who wins? We always love chatting with you guys there. If you haven't already, we'd love if you subscribe to our channel and give us a like on this video. Also, check us out on audio where you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, guys.
Peace.